Welcome back to another episode of Explain Yourself. This time we are here with Kirstie, who's another graduate student at Northern Illinois University, where I'm doing my research. So hello, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm very excited to talk to you about stuff. We're just like Anna, who we talked to previously. Kirstie is also part of my research group, so we spend a lot of time together doing research in the prairie. I like to start people off, if you could give me your 30-second elevator pitch for the research you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I actually have a really hard time with this, but I like to just kind of give my objectives, if I will. But basically what I'm studying is how pretty much ground mesopredators, which is such a weird word, right? But basically not any avian predators, right? So just ones that live on the ground, and how they're impacting small mammal communities. I had intended to look at how they're impacting small mammal physiology through stress, but that aspect of my research has not worked very well. And then I'm also doing coyote diet using stable isotope analysis, which is basically just looking at what they eat based off their carbon and nitrogen ratios in their tissues.
Okay, awesome. So ground mesopredators are things like coyotes and raccoons.
Raccoons, foxes. We don't have a ton of foxes out there, but there probably are some. Skunks. And that's mostly it out at our site. There are smaller predators like weasels and whatnot, but they can get in and out of our sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually caught one in a trap.
Oh, that's exciting. No.
Yeah.
So tell me about the weasel in the trap.
Its tail got stuck in the trap. I know, it was sad, but it worked out kind of cool because then I got a piece of tail for isotopes.
Oh, that's really cool.
So,
nice.
But yeah, it was
just fur?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just its tail somehow got stuck in there, and we couldn't tell what was going on because its tail was stuck, but its body was kind of like over here, and it was like not moving away and just like hissing at us. And so finally, I pulled on the trap, and it just kind of pulled it loose and it ran off.
Weasels are amazing.
They're interesting.
That's really neat. Okay. Yeah. So you are, so you have multiple sort of like chunks to your research. So if that's your elevator pitch, now sort of expand and explain it to us more fully.
So basically, I like predators. I always have. I used to pretend I was a tiger as a kid, like crawling around. Like Lion King was one of my favorite movies. Like I love predators. I think they're so cool. So when I got here, I wanted to study predators, and so it was kind of like, do I want to study the interaction or just the actual predator? And I went with the interaction. So what that is pretty much we built big fences. Have you talked about those at all?
No, we have not talked about the fences.
So we built fences and then around some sites, and then I have paired control sites that are open. And pretty much the fences are intended to keep out, again, those ground mesopredators. So the coyotes, foxes, raccoons, skunks, possums. That's another one. Maybe there's badgers out there. I've never actually seen those. I did camera trapping, which is basically just using a camera. When they walk by, it snaps their picture. And I only caught raccoons, skunks, possums, coyotes. Okay. So anyways, and then it keeps them out. And then I do small mammal sampling, which is pretty much just using traps baited with peanut butter and oats, catches the small mammals. And I'm looking within the fence and outside the fence to see if the lack of those predators is changing the community first. And so that's looking at like abundance. So pretty much how many there are of each species, but accounting for different factors. Diversity, so that accounts how many species and then how evenly spread they are in a community. I'm looking at pregnancy because the presence of predators, right, can stress out animals, their prey, and that can impact, so that's a physiological response, but then that can, if they're really stressed, which predators can be considered like a chronic stressor, it will impact reproduction. So we wanted to see if it changed reproduction between the sites. I'm looking at body condition, still working on that one.
Nice.
But so far, I've done a lot of my analyses and nothing significant. But it's trending and it's still early. I only have 1 year data.
I was going to say the fences were put up like this time last year is when they started, right?
They didn't even get finished until the spring, actually.
Okay, so still very early.
It is.
But so that's why when we collect the mammals out of the traps, if it's a female, you're looking to see if she's lactating or pregnant.
Okay.
So,
Not because of my research. This is actually, my research is one component of a long-term research that Holly established. And they had already been looking at pregnancy. I don't know what the initial reason was, but it's kind of nice having this large data set where you can just throw in things and be like, well, we have this, let's see if it's impacting it. So that one was actually kind of an afterthought.
Okay, but it lets the large data set lets us do a lot of like what if scenarios.
Yeah, there's a lot of different measures that you can be like, okay, I didn't initially think about this, but maybe it would impact this. I have this measured, let's see.
Awesome, okay. So you're the first person who has been talking about trapping something that isn't insects. So could you talk to us about, could you talk to us about how your traps work? Yeah,
so they're called Sherman live traps, and basically they're about this big, and the way it works is on the back there's a plate that you can pop off, and that's where you put the bait. And then inside, on this side, there's a track, it's the front piece, I don't know how else to describe it, but it goes down, and there's a little piece that holds it down. And when the mammal walks in, once it gets to a certain point, it kind of pushes something down that triggers that door to snap up. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of people are pretty familiar with that concept.
Yeah, it's like the have-a-heart traps that people put in their backyards for things. Yeah, so the animal is still alive inside.
Yeah, it doesn't kill them, they're just trapped inside. Yeah, they have some snacks. Some of the mammals love it. They come back every night. Which is what we call trap happy. Yeah. And then some of them can be trap shy and whatnot. So you'll get resident mice that you'll see every night that you trap.
That's super funny.
Yeah.
And I know in the winter you also put in like bedding or something?
Yeah, so if it gets below a certain temperature, we put in just some cotton bedding for insulation, because unfortunately these traps are just metal, right? So they're not going to really protect them from like the elements, and so they could freeze or they can burn. Like kind of, this sounds so brutal, but I view it as like scorching them in the summer, because it's so hot and they're in a metal plate, and if it's placed in the sun and we don't get to it fast enough, it's just like a little heat box, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we try really hard to make sure we place traps in the shade and the sun, and we try and move fast.
Yeah, well, and we collect them early in the morning, so the earlier you get out there and start collecting them, the better to keep that from happening.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't leave the traps open during the day, because we only want nocturnal species, and we don't want species we don't want, and then we don't want unnecessary deaths.
Yeah, and that's probably a good point, again, because you're the first sort of like trapping vertebrates person. Can you talk to us more about sort of like the ethics and the IACUC and stuff that goes into making sure that the animals you're studying aren't harmed unduly by your study? Yeah,
so IACUC is just a process that you have to go through to pretty much submit what you want to do, and it has to be approved by a committee, and they have certain restrictions and requirements. I didn't do it for the small mammal trapping, but I did do that lab study where I had to do an IACUC for a lab portion, so I actually have worked through the IACUC process. It's interesting, but it's really good, because it has restrictions set in place to make sure that you're providing the animals with, like in a lab setting, with reasonable conditions. Like I proposed a bunch of stuff, and then one person was like, hey, well, what about like something to entertain the small mammals? Like they can be colonial species, or they live in groups, and you're going to isolate them each in traps, and so that's kind of rude. Like, what about environmental enrichment is what they call it. And so I added in like just toilet paper rolls. Oh, okay. Because it's something they could hide in and whatnot. So just things like that to make sure that their conditions are good. With trapping, it's making sure that they're not going to be unnecessarily harmed. The way you're handling them is appropriate for you and them, to keep you safe and them. And then also, like, if something were to happen and they're going to die, whatever the condition, that they are I don't want to just say killed.
Oh, they're humanely euthanized, right? Like there's a specific
humanely euthanized.
Yeah, there's a specific
protocol
procedure.
To make sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And about the handling stuff, so I know we talked about in our seminar recently about some fuss on social media over questions about how small mammals are handled during trapping. So can you talk to us more about like how you do it and why you do it the way you do?
Yeah, so this one's kind of harder for me to answer, because like I said, I wasn't around for the establishment, but there are just norms, right? The way that people do it. And one thing we do is put the mammals in a plastic bag. They're only in there for a couple minutes at most.
And it's not like zipped all the way
Yeah, it's not like
closed
we're
either.
sealed.
It's just like a thing to hold them in,
get
but you
away.
can also see through it. Okay.
So it's like once we capture them, we pull off that back part and they will fall through into a bag. We put the bag around it. And then while they're in the bag, we can look at them, but we're gonna take them out, so we don't do a ton of that. We usually just weigh them and get them out, because you don't want them in there unnecessarily long. And you don't want to handle them unnecessarily long. You want to reduce stress.
And you weigh them in the bag with it's like a fish scale,
Yeah,
right?
just like
because if you tried to put them on like an actual scale, they
just
would
run away.
Yeah. Okay.
See you later.
So it's out of necessity.
Yes, and again, it's reducing harm, right?
Yeah.
It's just a quick, you don't have to be disturbed in your bag. I just weigh you, and then you kind of pinch their tail and work the bag around, and then you scruff them, right, by like the back of their neck.
It's like a puppy or a kitten.
And that's to, again, prevent unnecessary harm. It kind of pins their arms back like this, so they can't move, they can't really turn and bite you, because some people have bite reflexes. And then we take their tail length, their right hind foot length, their body length. We identify the species, their gender, if it's a female, if we call it reproductive, but that's pregnant or lactating. And then I think that's all we do, right? I cut hair samples for my stress thing, but that didn't work, so.
Well, but yeah, that's
and then we just release them and, we tag them. We tag them, that's the most important part. We tag them with a little pit tag. It's kind of like a chip in your dog, goes in the scruff of their neck again. It's just a tiny little tag that it's a quick injection.
And then that is how you said they come back night after night, that it's the same individual because you can scan them.
We have a scanner, and then it's like, oh, hey, we already caught you. Yeah.
So they've got a code number, right?
Yep.
Nice.
And that's what's called like a mark recapture method. So you mark them and then you can recapture them and you can track their populations through time.
And it's really exciting when we find ones that, we caught this last year and it's still here and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so over winters, they're more rare because these are short-lived species, so. But yeah, you'll get them, and that's exciting because that's more interesting data sometimes.
Yeah, cool. So we spend a lot of time out in the field. What are your ideal field conditions?
I like it to be warm, but not too warm. Which is who doesn't, right? Yeah. But I would say ideal, low veg. So maybe earlier spring, but warm. I don't like to be cold, and no ticks. I think that's, other than that, I'm pretty flexible. Yeah. I don't mind the field. The one thing I hate the most about the field is when it's really tall and it has a lot of what grass is that? Big blue stem. And you're walking through it and it comes back and it hits me in the eyes. And I really hate that. So
I can't imagine why.
It's happened so many times where I'm so then I do the squinty walk and then your face feels funny after. Yeah, I don't like that.
So you don't like the grasses beating you in the face. Is there anything else that you think of as a necessary evil to the research that you're doing, or something you really dislike about research in general?
That's a good question. Depends on the day. Some days I hate doing the research. Some days I love it. Sampling gets hard. Especially when because it's me and Nick split it, so it's 12 days of sampling, but we've split it. We've gotten to the point where we just split it into blocks of 6. So one of us does the first 6, one of us does the last 6. And it's morning and night, and then in the fall and the spring, we have classes going on, and I'm married, and I have a husband who's a grad student, so he has classes. I have a 2-year-old, so she has her stuff, and sometimes that gets frustrating.
Sleep?
Yeah, less sleep, less time for work, everything. It can be pretty exhausting.
On the other hand, though, what do you think is your favorite thing about your research?
I don't know. I actually like I really like the field component. It's I hate it and I love it. You know what I mean? I really love the field when I can go out with Danny and Maple and they can come with me. It takes a lot of pressure off because I get really stressed during sampling. I need to move fast. I need to get back. I have other things, people, But when they come with me, I love it because it's just relaxed, and then we'll stay at the researcher house. It's like a little vacation, and it's pretty and it's nice and it's fun. I really like that. I actually really like for the most part, playing in R, like doing data stuff. It feels like solving puzzles. I really like puzzles. So I like that a lot too.
Yeah. More people on here have expressed their appreciation for running the stats, and yeah, I think that's important, that like, oh yeah, doing the field work and the experiment is like a ton of fun, but the stats are how we get to like our end and our conclusion and be able to write the paper. So yeah, they're definitely fun and important.
Yeah, I like them a lot more than I thought I would.
So yeah, you mentioned, and this is one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on, because your story is a little different. You have a husband and a child already, and am I allowed to
I'm
say?
pregnant, yes.
Another one on the way, yay. So that's something that I've definitely struggled with thinking about. How do I do field research and have this highly demanding academic career and think about wanting to have a family? So, you know, how do you make this work? And you know, I think about that a lot actually, because before we did it, my husband's brother is a grad student who has a wife and many children. Well, they have 3. They're pregnant with their 4th though. Oh wow.
But they didn't always have that. They had 2 for the most part during his PhD. And we asked him, like, do you think we can do 2 grad students with a kid? And he said no. He said, I don't think you can do it. Like, it's too hard. And it wasn't bad the first year. This year's harder. I think being pregnant has been hard. I don't know, you give and take, a lot of give and take, a lot of imposter syndrome because I don't have as much time to devote. And so a lot of like, it's just for me, the biggest thing I think is realizing that some things just, I made a choice and that was to have a family too, and that means other things have to be sacrificed. And so we try and balance, we try really hard to strive for work-life balance. So one aspect has been having an amazing advisor who also has a family and is understandable and is like helpful, you know what I mean? So she's been really instrumental. But yeah, and she really cares about work-life balance. So she helps promote that, which helps me promote that. But I mean, a lot of working at night.
Yeah, and like you said, it's nice when you can take them into the field, right? So you sort of have life at the same time, and I think it's awesome for Maple to be growing up, getting to experience the prairie and see her parents being scientists and researchers so early on. Yeah, let's go back to the beginning. So why did you decide to become a scientist, and why did you decide to go to grad school?
Those are good questions. I was pre-med, actually. I was going to be a doctor. I was super set on it. But they say, you know, you should have like a diversity component when you're pre-med. So a different major than biology, chemistry, or physics, because everybody is that. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, what should I do? So I started as English, which was just crazy, because it's like my brain flipped from high school to college. I loved English in high school, now I hate it. I mean, I don't hate it, but I would never have survived as an English major. So I switched, and I didn't know what to switch to, and somebody had told me, because I went to a small school, so different opportunities, had mentioned this new major, environmental studies, and so I went and talked to them and was like, hey, that sounds cool, like I've always liked being outside, I love outdoorsy stuff, camping, hiking, climbing, all that. And so I was like, oh, you know, that seems like the best of both worlds, and I get to learn about outside, like perfect. So I went, and they were like, okay, like you can do the science one, it's more science-based, whatever. And I was like, okay, perfect, I'll do that. And then by the end of my undergrad, it was like, I don't really want to be a doctor anymore. I actually really like this. I started doing research with an undergraduate professor, and I liked that. And I did an REU internship at the University of Kentucky. I also really liked that. I'm really, really competitive with myself, so I have to be the best, which is one thing having a family has made me have to let go of. I don't have to be the best anymore. And so it was always like I wanted to be a doctor because that was the highest point, right? But then once I didn't want to do that, it was like, well, now I have to go do a PhD because that's that highest point. And I loved doing research. I loved the ownership of doing it. But after my undergrad, I took some time off. I still wasn't positive what I wanted to do, you know. I knew I wanted to go to grad school, at least I thought I did, but I didn't know in what. And I worked a couple jobs for the Utah DNR, Division of Natural Resources. And it was fine, but it was like a wildlife technician, so I was just responsible for the work and not like the thinking. Whereas in my undergrad, in that internship and my research, I was responsible for thinking, you know, and I hated it. I was like, I cannot just be a worker. I have to be able to be the brains. I have to be able to, and I have to be my own boss. That's one of those things. I just have to.
Oh, and you said you like solving puzzles, right?
Yeah,
So,
I like to solve problems. I like to read. I love researching stuff. Like even if I'm not researching school stuff, I'm researching mom stuff or food stuff, or I'm always just looking up stuff. I love to. So after that, it really solidified. Like, yes, I definitely want to go to grad school, and I want to go into academia. So I want to get a PhD anyways, because I also am like I could be a student forever. I like school. I like being in this setting. I like classes. I like structured learning.
Yeah,
so.
I can completely agree with that.
Yeah, and other jobs I haven't just felt very fulfilling. I've done a lot of other jobs. I took like 4 years off.
Yep.
So, and I don't find them as fulfilling.
Yeah, we were the two oldest starting grad students in our little cohort, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you take a roundabout way to get to grad school, but it's okay.
I'm glad I did. It helped me know for sure. And then I get burnt out, so I didn't get burnt out because I took all that time off.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So what was the research that you were doing during your undergrad?
So my undergrad advisor loved birds. She's like one of those bird nerds who just loves birds. She's all about birds. She's so funny. But so she did bird stuff for her PhD. And so what I did is she had filmed nests on an urban to rural gradient to see if like predators and stuff were different. And so so she was new. I was her first student. Okay. And so we're talking, and what I did basically was sort through these videos to see, we were first trying to like just quantify their alarm calls. How many, what do they look like, whatnot. And then we were gonna see if there was like a nesting response based off the alarm call given, but I didn't finish in time. It's still an interesting question, but I got mostly through it, but then I graduated. So I really liked it though. It wasn't field research, it was all like just sorting through videos and computer stuff, but I went out in the field with them a lot because over time she took on more students and they had different projects, and so.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what did you do you did an internship in Kentucky?
That was like I applied to a project, so I didn't have as much say in what it was, but it was looking at avian circadian rhythms in response to light pollution.
Whoa.
Yeah, I really liked it. It was cool. But again, you realize once you start doing research how short, like it seems like, it was 10 weeks. Like, that seems like plenty of time, but it's so short. Even a master's, like it's like, this is too short. Yeah. I need more time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. In other disciplines, I think, they can whip out an experiment in no time, but for us to collect data, it takes a really long time.
Danny's doing psychology, and they can do what's called MTurk, which is like that online system where people can fill out surveys. Okay, so he did like 2 projects like that, and he popped out data in like 2 hours. Had done a power analysis, had enough responses to like, that was it. Now he just goes and I was like, cool. He has like 1 billion projects going because they can sample any time. You know what I mean?
Cool. Yeah. Whereas, you do 12 days in a row in how many times a year?
4 times.
4 times a year. Yeah. Yep. And a lot of that time is spent checking and then closing traps that don't have anything in them.
So rewarding.
Yeah, we work hard. Oh my goodness. So you talked a little bit about like getting a PhD and wanting to work in academia. So what exactly is like your next step after this?
So, first have a baby. And then, because Danny's doing his PhD, I have to wait a year for him to be further along, and then we're hoping he can do his last year remote. Okay. So in that time off, I'm hoping to either get some more teaching experience or maybe some like, consulting experience. We'll see. And then I've been talking to potential PhD advisors. There's a lady at Utah State who seems really awesome. I've already spoken with her. She and I intend to keep in touch. And the timing would actually work out really well because she's getting a grant this spring. So going like the next year, would work well. And then actually Dr. Schmitz is somebody I'm interested in. So we'll see.
So you don't want to stay here. You want to go somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
And what sort of, like after you're done getting your PhD, what sort of job do you have in mind?
I have thought about this way too much. I'm a planner. I like plan my future,
Yes.
even though I know it's not always going to work out that way. I'd like to be at an R2 level university because, especially speaking with Holly, who has a family and has, I think we have somewhat similar personalities, that like insanely competitive drive.
Yeah.
We want to be the best. I think an R2 would be a good fit because it doesn't have that insane competitive, so I can focus more on like
So
work
R2
life.
is a level of research university,
Yes.
so there's a teaching
Okay,
component
hold on.
and a research component, but what does the 2 stand for?
I don't actually know. I just know there's like tiers, right? R1, R2.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
just like R1 are like big universities. Things I obviously think of like the University of Utah or even like Yale is an R1, University of Washington. So those big research universities, and they're focused. When you're a professor there, it's more research focused. I think they do some teaching still, but it's much more research focused. It's much more publish or perish, much more competitive, that type of stuff. And they have a lot, but they also have a lot more funds and a lot more resources. Whereas an R2, and I use actually an R2, I don't know if you knew that.
Okay.
But it's smaller, they still have, it's still research focused, but more teaching focused. It's a little less
there's, like, a
competitive,
balance.
little less resources, yeah. And then there's like R3s, so that's even maybe a step down. And then there's places where I went, like, which is
Like a
private,
teaching college,
it's
right?
just teaching,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Huh. All right. Well, yeah. So you've seen like you've sort of figured out what will work best for you and the parts of your life that you already have and where you want to go with it. Awesome. Well, we wish you the best of luck with all of that. I think you're a very passionate researcher, so I hope that everything works out well for you. And congratulations on the new baby that's coming. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it. If you didn't like this video, please share it with someone who would. And if you'd like to support the Roving Naturalist, you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can also hit the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon so you know every time I release a new video. Thanks so much, and I'll see you later.